The Last War of the Two Kingdoms, Scene 1. The Whisper of War. The story begins long before memory. In an age when the air itself seemed woven with the scent of smoke and iron. Asterisk. The world was smaller than its borders, drawn not by oceans or treaties, but by mountains and the courage of men who dared to cross them. Asterisk. Between the great forests of the north and the golden plains of the south lay two kingdoms that shared a single winding river. Asterisk. To the east of that river stood Eldoria, the land of poets and farmers, where the wheat grew tall and the people sang while they worked. Asterisk. To the west was Raven, a darker land of black stone fortresses and cold winds, ruled by kings who trusted swords more than smiles. Asterisk. For centuries, that river had been their silent promise. Asterisk. Neither kingdom crossed it, and peace, though fragile, endured. Asterisk. Children grew up chasing butterflies on its banks, not knowing that beneath its waters slept the bones of soldiers who had once died fighting for the same soil. In Eldoria's capital, the city of Cairnwall, the markets overflowed with life. Asterisk. Bakers called out their prices, and bells from the cathedral tower announced the hour. Asterisk. The smell of roasted chestnuts drifted through the cobbled streets. Asterisk. It was a good morning, perhaps the last good morning the city would ever know. Asterisk. Inside the royal castle, Queen Althea of Eldoria stood by a tall arched window, her fingers brushing the frost on the glass. Asterisk. She had ruled beside her husband, King Edric, for 10 years of calm that had begun to crumble in recent months. Asterisk. Her advisors had whispered rumors. Ravencourt's armies drilling in the shadow of the western hills, scouts disappearing along the river crossings, merchant caravans attacked by unseen riders. At first, she had dismissed it all as superstition, fear magnified by winter. Asterisk. But that morning, as snow began to fall, a soldier burst into the throne room, breathless and pale. Mud streaked his armor. A broken arrow protruded from his shield. He dropped to one knee. "My queen," he gasped. "They've crossed the river." The words echoed through the vast marble hall like a spell being cast. The courtiers froze. Asterisk. A single candle flickered and went out. That night, the bells of Cairnwall tolled. Asterisk. Their sound rolled through the frozen valleys, reaching even the smallest villages. Asterisk. It was the call to arms, the sound every farmer dreaded. Asterisk. Men gathered in taverns and barns, sharpening old swords, fitting arrows to bows that had hung untouched for years. Asterisk. Fathers kissed their children's foreheads. Asterisk. Wives tied charms to their husbands' wrists, little copper pendants shaped like suns, for luck, for protection, for hope. Asterisk. In one such village, a young blacksmith named Taran watched the flames in his forge dance against the cold night air. Asterisk. He had heard the bells, but part of him didn't believe they could mean war. Asterisk. He had a wife, Mira, and a daughter, barely 5 years old. Asterisk. He whispered to himself, "It won't come here. Not to us." Asterisk. But the river was less than a day's ride away, and by dawn, the horizon was already burning. Across that same horizon, the banners of Ravencourt snapped in the wind. Asterisk. Their colors black and crimson cut against the snow like wounds. Asterisk. King Rowan of Ravencourt tall and fierce, rode at the front of his army. Asterisk, his armor bore no ornament, only scars. Asterisk, he was not a cruel man by nature, but he had been taught that mercy was weakness. Asterisk, his father had died at the hands of Eldorian knights long ago. Or so he'd been told. He had spent his life preparing for this moment, to avenge the past, to carve his name into the bones of history. Beside him rode his commander, Sir Varin Hale, a veteran with grey in his beard and 1,000-yard stare. Varin looked east toward the river. "It's frozen solid," he said quietly. Rowan nodded. "Then the gods have built us a bridge." Asterisk, and with that, the order was given. Thousands of boots thundered across the ice. Spears glittered under the moonlight, and the sound of war returned to the world. Asterisk, by morning, the first villages had fallen. Smoke rose like black towers into the sky. The people of Eldoria fled eastward, carrying whatever they could. Asterisk, the soldiers tried to hold the western pass, but were cut down before the sun reached its peak. Asterisk, in the castle, Queen Althea stood before her husband, King Edric. Asterisk, he was already dressed for battle, his armor glinting beneath a cloak of red. Asterisk, stay here, he told her. Guard the people. If I don't return, she stopped him with a hand to his chest. You will return, because you must. Eldoria needs a king. Asterisk, he smiled faintly. And I need my queen. Asterisk, their eyes met briefly, desperately. Asterisk, then he turned, mounted his horse, and rode into the storm, far from the castles and crowns. The war felt different. Asterisk, for the farmers. It was not about honor or vengeance. It was about surviving the night. In one burned village, Terran, the blacksmith searched the ashes of his home. Asterisk. Myra and their daughter were gone. Asterisk, only the small copper sun charm remained, blackened by smoke. He picked it up and whispered a name that the wind carried away, somewhere beyond the hills. Drums began to beat again. Asterisk, slow, steady, relentless. Days turned to weeks. Snow deepened. The dead froze where they fell. Asterisk, the river, once a line of life between two nations, became a graveyard of ice and blood. Queen Althea ordered the city gates closed. Inside Cairnwall, refugees crowded the streets. Food grew scarce. The air itself seemed heavy with sorrow. Asterisk, every night, she walked the ramparts alone, looking toward the west. Asterisk, some said they saw her whispering into the wind, as if speaking to someone far beyond sight. Asterisk, in Ravencourt's camp, the war council gathered around a fire. The flames flickered over tired faces. King Rowan stared into the heat, his jaw set. Asterisk, Sir Varin spoke first. We've taken the border, but Eldoria will not fall easily. Their queen is strong. Their people, stubborn. Rowan said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, strong queens raise strong nations. We'll break both. But as he spoke, something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, a whisper of exhaustion. War was supposed to be glorious. It wasn't. It was mud and screams, and the smell of burnt wheat. Asterisk, he closed his eyes and remembered his father's voice. Asterisk, victory is the only truth worth dying for. He wondered if that was ever true. Asterisk, one night, While the soldiers slept, Rowan wandered alone to the frozen riverbank. The moonlight glowed silver on the ice. He could see his reflection there. Haunted. On the other side, barely visible through the mist. The faint outline of a woman stood on the opposite shore. Queen Althea. Their eyes met. Across the river that had once divided peace from pain. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. The wind stilled. The stars held their breath. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment was gone. The mist swallowed her shape, and the first snowflakes began to fall again. By dawn, both kingdoms were awake once more, preparing for battles neither side could truly win. The war had only begun, but already the earth groaned under its weight, and far above it all, the gods, if they still watched, remained silent. The whisper of war had become a roar, and soon it would consume everything. The last war of the two kingdoms seen to the march to battle. The morning broke with a heavy silence. No birds sang. No laughter carried through the valleys. Even the river seemed still, as if it too feared what was coming. At the edge of Eldoria's capital, the army gathered beneath the walls, thousands of men wrapped in wool and steel, their breath rising in clouds against the cold dawn. The banners of the golden sun fluttered weakly in the wind, and from the towers above, bells tolled once more, slow and deep, marking the hour when peace finally ended. King Edric rode to the front lines, his armor glinting with frost. Beside him rode his captain's young men, brave but afraid, trying not to show it. He looked across the ranks and saw their faces. Farmers turned soldiers, carpenters clutching swords heavier than their courage, boys who had never yet killed a man. Do not fear the darkness ahead, Edric said, his voice steady but soft. The gods do not count the years we live. They count the moments we stand. The men listened, silent, their hearts caught between hope and dread. Then, with a slow nod, the king raised his sword to the sky, the signal to march. The first drums began deep and rhythmic, echoing through the valley like the heartbeat of the earth. They moved southward, down the frost-covered road that wound between the hills. Villagers came out of their homes to watch. Mothers held children close. Old men bowed their heads. The soldiers walked past them in silence, boots crunching on the frozen ground, their armor clinking in tired unison. A shepherd left his flock to watch them disappear into the fog. He crossed himself and whispered a prayer to know God in particular. As the day stretched on, the army reached the great river Vale, now half frozen. Beyond it, smoke rose in thin black columns, the first villages taken by Ravencourt. Scouts reported that the enemy had built camps along the western banks. They could hear their hammers, their songs, the cruel rhythm of preparation. King Edric dismounted and walked to the river's edge. He knelt, scooped a handful of icy water, and let it slip through his fingers. It was the same river that had once brought trade, laughter, and peace. Now it was a border drawn in blood. Behind him, his general, Sir Aidan approached. Aidan was a seasoned warrior, his beard silvered, his eyes calm as stone. My king, he said, if we strike now, we may drive them back before they're ready. Edric didn't answer at first. He watched a single leaf drift across the water. Then, quietly, and if we strike too soon, we lose everything. Aidan nodded. Then we wait. For the right moment, the king said. War isn't won by speed. It's won by patience. But deep inside, he knew patience was already slipping away. Across the river, in the Ravencourt encampment, the scene was different. Iron, fire, and hunger. The soldiers of Ravencourt were hard men from the mountains, used to the cold, hardened by years of scarcity. They sang songs of blood and glory. But few truly believed in them anymore. War was a duty, not a choice. In his command tent, King Rowan studied a map spread across the table. His hands trembled slightly as he traced the river's curve. Sir Varin, Hale, entered. Removing his gloves, the scouts say Eldoria's army has reached the Vale. They're setting camp on the eastern side. Rowan didn't look up. Then they know we're coming. Varin hesitated. Shall we attack tonight? Rowan's jaw tightened. Not yet. Let them see our fires first. Let them fear the night. He looked up, his eyes cold. Fear weakens faster than steel. Varin nodded. Though he knew the king's heart wasn't as cold as his words. He'd seen Rowan linger by the river, staring eastward, as if haunted by something unseen. That night, the valley glowed with twin fires, one from each side of the river. The two armies faced each other across the frozen water, their camps burning like constellations mirrored on the earth. The air was thick with smoke and silence. Between the camps lay the frozen river, a fragile bridge between life and death. Somewhere in the dark, the wind carried a song from Ravencourt's side. A low, mournful tune sung by soldiers too tired to sleep. It was not a song of victory. It was a song of home. In Eldoria's camp, young Terran the blacksmith sat beside a dying fire. He had found a sword among the fallen, one he barely knew how to wield. He kept turning the copper charm in his hand, his daughter's charm worn and blackened, but still warm to the touch. He whispered to himself, if I must die, let it be quick. If I must live, let it be for her. Near midnight, snow began to fall again. Soft flakes drifted down over both armies, blanketing tents and armor in white silence. For a few hours, the world seemed peaceful again, as if heaven had forgotten to look. Queen Althea, back in stood at her balcony watching the snow. She could almost feel the pulse of the battle miles away. She prayed, not to win, but to end. In her chamber, the candles flickered, and one by one, each flame went out. The last candle died as she whispered, bring them home, at dawn. The horns of Ravencourt sounded low, long. the kind of sound that makes the earth remember death, asterisk, from the western side of the river. Black banners rose. Archers moved into position. Siege engines rolled forward, their wheels creaking under frost. Asterisk, across the ice. Eldoria's men stirred from sleep, clutching weapons. Eyes wide, King Edric climbed the ridge above the camp. Before him stretched the valley, a white sea of fog and flame. He looked to his standard-bearer. "Sound the call," he said. Asterisk, a single horn blew in reply, echoing through the mountains. And so it began. The first volley of arrows cut the sky. Asterisk, they fell like rain upon the river, shattering the thin ice in shards. Asterisk, men screamed, slipped, fell through the cracks. The river claimed its first dead before the swords even met. King Edric's riders charged forward, hooves pounding against frozen ground. Asterisk, the clash was thunderous, iron against iron, life against death. Asterisk, Terran found himself in the middle of it, the copper charm tied to his wrist. Asterisk, he swung his blade wildly, terrified, until the world became nothing but motion and noise. Asterisk, somewhere behind him, he heard a man singing the same song from the night before, but it ended too soon, swallowed by steel. Asterisk, hours passed, though time no longer meant anything. Asterisk, when the sun finally broke through the clouds, the river was littered with bodies. Asterisk, Eldorian blue, Ravencourt red, indistinguishable in the snow. Asterisk, the ground steamed from blood and breath. Asterisk, the crows had already begun their feast. Asterisk, King Edric stood among the wreckage, his sword cracked, his armor dented. Asterisk, beside him, Sir Aidan was bleeding from the shoulder. "We've held the line," Aidan said weakly. "For how long?" the king asked. Asterisk, Aidan looked out over the valley. "Until they come again." Asterisk, Edric closed his eyes. "Then we'll be ready." But the words felt hollow. Asterisk, on the far bank, King Rowan watched the smoke rise. Asterisk, his men dragged the wounded back to camp. His healers were already out of herbs. Asterisk, Varen stood beside him, his face dark with soot. "We lost 1,000 today," Varen said. Rowan didn't move. "So did they." Asterisk, "Then, what have we gained?" Asterisk, Rowan's answer was barely a whisper. "Nothing." He turned away, mounting his horse, as he rode back through his army. He saw the faces of his soldiers, asterisk, young, broken, too human to be numbers on a map. Asterisk, that night, he sat alone, asterisk, and for the first time in years, he prayed. Not for victory, but for forgiveness. Back in Cairnwall, Queen Althea felt the shift in the air. Asterisk, the fire in her chamber flickered violently, and the window rattled as if touched by unseen hands. Asterisk, she knelt and whispered. Asterisk, end this before it ends us. Her voice trembled. Her tears fell on the marble floor. Asterisk, and outside, the snow kept falling soft, endless, and cruelly quiet. By the week's end, both armies had withdrawn from the river, asterisk, each claiming victory, each burying their dead in silence. The river froze over once more, hiding the blood beneath clear ice, and when the wind blew, it sounded almost like whispers, the kind that say, asterisk, this is only the beginning. The Last War of the Two Kingdoms, Scene 3. The Winter of Fire. The first snows of midwinter came early that year. Asterisk, they should have brought silence. But instead, they carried the crackle of burning wood. Asterisk, the cry of soldiers. The faint hiss of arrows slicing the wind. Asterisk, the war that had begun as a whisper along the river had now spread like wildfire. Asterisk, villages that once traded apples and salt now traded only smoke. Asterisk, the golden fields of Eldoria were gone, trampled, blackened, cold. The mountain passes of Ravencourt groaned beneath the weight of marching men. Even the sky seemed different, gray and heavy, as though heaven itself had turned its back on the living eye. Ashes over Eldoria, from the high walls of Cairnwall. Queen Althea watched her kingdom burn. Asterisk, every horizon flickered red, and the snow that fell upon the city turned gray before it touched the ground. The people huddled inside the gates. Asterisk, mothers searched for food that no longer existed. Asterisk, children stared at the empty sky. Asterisk, and the priests in the cathedral rang bells until their hands bled, as if sound alone could keep despair away. In the great hall, Althea gathered her council. Asterisk, maps lay scattered across the long oak table, marked with pins that no longer mattered, each representing a village already lost. Asterisk, General Adon, bandaged and pale, bowed low. Asterisk, my queen. If we retreat any further, Cairnwall itself will be next. Asterisk, Althea looked at him, her eyes hollow but unbroken. Asterisk, then we do not retreat, but the people need hope. She interrupted softly. Asterisk, and hope cannot run. Adon lowered his gaze. Outside, thunder rolled not from the clouds, but from the drums of Ravencourt echoing across the frozen plains. To the march through flame. Asterisk, south of the capital, King Edric's army trudged through knee-deep snow. Asterisk, the wind howled, carrying sparks from burning farmhouses that dotted the horizon like dying stars. Asterisk, their rations were gone. Their boots split at the seams, but they marched on. Among them walked Terran, the blacksmith. Asterisk, his sword was chipped, his beard coated with frost. Every village he passed looked like his own, a ghost of wood and ash. Asterisk, sometimes at night he thought he saw figures in the distance. Asterisk, women, children, shadows reaching out through the smoke. Asterisk, but when he called to them, they vanished. The mind plays tricks when it is starving. On the fourth day, the column reached the village of Greymere. Asterisk, what remained of it? Roofs collapsed under snow, corpses frozen where they fell. Asterisk, Terran knelt beside one, a woman clutching a child in her arms. Asterisk, both faces hidden under frost. Asterisk, he wanted to look away but couldn't. Asterisk, from somewhere behind him, a soldier whispered. Asterisk, may the gods remember them. Asterisk, Terran answered quietly. If the gods still exist. 3. The fire in Ravencourt. Asterisk, across the border. Ravencourt was not spared the fire either. Asterisk, for every village they burned in one of their own burned from retaliation. Asterisk, the war had turned inward. Victory had turned hollow. Asterisk, King Rowan walked through his own capital, Blackstone. Asterisk, and saw beggars where there had once been merchants, widows where there had once been brides. The city's great cathedral, dedicated to Saint Verin, had collapsed after a siege engine misfired. Asterisk children played among its ruins, using broken helmets as toys. Rowan's people no longer cheered when they saw him. They bowed out of habit, not respect. Asterisk in his hall. He faced his councilmen who once spoke boldly, now muttering like ghosts. Asterisk how long until Eldoria breaks? One asked. Rowan answered without looking up, perhaps after we do. Asterisk, Sir Varen frowned. The men are tired, if we press east again. Asterisk, we must, Rowan said. If I stop now, I will be remembered as the king who bled his land for nothing. Asterisk, he turned toward the window, watching snow fall on the charred roofs. His reflection in the glass looked older than his years. For the burning river asterisk by midwinter. The river itself was aflame. Asterisk oil from siege engines, burning timbers from bridges. The bodies of men and horses drifting beneath sheets of ice, for miles. Smoke curled up like black ribbons into the white sky. Asterisk, at night. Both sides lit their camps with the fire of their enemies' villages. Asterisk, the valley glowed red. The wind smelled of salt and blood. King Edric wrote in his journal by candlelight. Asterisk. This winter does not end. Asterisk, even the snow burns. Asterisk, he paused, hearing distant thunder. Asterisk, not weather, but the sound of Ravencourt's catapults beyond the hills. Asterisk. He wondered how many of his own letters would ever be read. The widow of Graymere asterisk in the ruins of Graymere. One life stirred among the dead. Asterisk, a woman named Lysa, her face wrapped in soot-stained cloth, emerged from the wreckage of her home. Her husband had been taken by Ravencourt's soldiers. Her son lost to the snows. Asterisk, for days she wandered the fields, carrying a single candle she'd taken from the village chapel. She didn't know why she kept it, perhaps to remember what light once meant. Asterisk, one evening, she reached the remnants of Edric's army. Asterisk, the men looked at her with quiet disbelief. A living soul among ghosts. She said nothing, just knelt and began tending to the wounded with bare hands. Asterisk, Taran watched her, realizing that sometimes courage didn't wear armor. Asterisk, when night fell, Lysa lit her candle in the center of the camp. Asterisk, the small flame flickered weakly in the wind. But somehow every man who saw it felt a little less alone. They began calling her the widow of Graymere. Asterisk, no one knew her prayers, but her light became the symbol they carried into every dawn, via the letter that never arrived in Cairnwall. Queen Althea wrote a letter to her husband. She didn't know if he was still alive. She wrote anyway. Asterisk, greater than my love. I no longer hear the river at night. The wind has taken its place, whispering things I cannot bear to understand. If you live, hold fast. If you do not, know that I kept faith until my breath failed. Asterisk, our people still sing your name. Asterisk, even if the song sounds like mourning. Asterisk, she sealed the letter with wax and handed it to a messenger. Asterisk. He never reached the front. Asterisk, 3 days later, his body was found frozen by the roadside, the letter still pressed against his chest. Asterisk 7. The candle and the storm. Weeks passed. The snow deepened. And still the fighting went on, not for land, not for victory, but because neither side knew how to stop. Asterisk Taren dreamed each night of his daughter's voice, calling from somewhere in the flames. Asterisk, he would wake shaking, clutching the charm until it cut his palm. Asterisk beside him, Lysa's candle burned lower each day, its wax pooling like tears in the snow. One evening, a storm rolled over the valley, a storm so fierce it drowned the sound of battle. Lightning split the sky, striking the ruins of a church on the hill. Asterisk, the spire collapsed, scattering sparks into the wind. Asterisk, and for one brief hour, both armies stopped fighting. Men stared upward, blinded by snow and fire. It felt like the world itself was weeping. 8. The frozen night after the storm. Silence returned, a silence thicker than death. Frost coated every weapon, every face. Those who still breathed did so through cracked lips. Even the horses had stopped moving. Asterisk, King Rowan sat in his tent, staring at the frozen candle before him. Its wick had gone dark. He whispered to himself. Asterisk, what if peace was never something the gods wanted us to find? Asterisk, on the other side of the valley, King Edric knelt beside a wounded soldier Turan. The blacksmith's breath came shallow and slow. Edric placed the copper charm in Tarun's hand. Rest now, son, he said softly. Asterisk, the fire's gone. Asterisk, but when he looked up, the horizon was still burning, Ike's the last snow by season's end. Neither kingdom could remember what had started the war. Asterisk, hunger had devoured loyalty. Cold had erased names. Asterisk, the river, once red, now froze, clear again. Asterisk, revealing shapes beneath the ice, men, locked together in death. One from each side, their hands still gripping each other's armor. Above them, flakes of snow drifted down slowly, asterisk covering every banner, every crown, every sin. And in the ruined camps, the last candles flickered out. The widow of Greymere's flame died quietly, its smoke rising to join the gray sky. For the first time in months, the valley was truly silent. X echoes asterisk. When spring finally came, no one was left to see it. The wind moved through the empty tents like a ghost, carrying the faint scent of ash and thawing soil. The war had ended not with peace, but with exhaustion. Somewhere in the ruins of Cairnwall, a single bell rang, moved only by the wind. Its sound drifted across the dead river, through the blackened forests, over the bones of kings and peasants alike, and the world exhaled. The last war of the two kingdoms seen. For the queen's last prayer, the dawn came gray and hollow. No birds sang any more. Even the air felt weary, like the heavens themselves were tired of breathing. Asterisk, Queen Althea stood alone upon the battlements of Cairnwall. Asterisk, the wind tangled her hair, tugging at the black veil she wore since her husband's last message had never come. Asterisk, beneath her, the city stirred slowly, like an old man waking from a dream he didn't wish to remember. Asterisk, smoke still rose from the eastern quarter. Asterisk, what little food remained had been rationed days ago. Asterisk, the bakers' ovens were cold. Asterisk, the cathedral's bells had fallen silent. Asterisk, she closed her eyes and whispered. Asterisk, Lord of Light, if you hear me still. Asterisk, let this day not be the last. Asterisk, but even as she prayed, she knew it was the last eye, the fading kingdom inside the great hall. Her council gathered asterisk, a circle of hollow-eyed men and women, their armor tarnished, their faith worn thin. General Adon spoke first. The enemy has crossed the river. Their banners were seen by dawn. They'll be here by nightfall. No one gasped. No one cried. The news no longer had power to wound them. Althea nodded slowly. Asterisk, then it ends here. Asterisk, the high priest, a frail man in robes that no longer shone white, looked up from his trembling hands. My queen, he said softly, if you have any last command, give it now. Althea's eyes moved across the room, to the maps that no longer mattered, asterisk, to the portraits of ancestors who once ruled in peace, asterisk, to the great silver chalice upon the altar, now empty of wine. Burn the banners, she said. There was a murmur of shock, asterisk. No flag deserves to rise when its people have fallen. She turned toward the window where the snow drifted down over the ruined gardens. I will not let this castle become a tomb of pride. If we are to die, we will die as human, not as kings. 2. The messenger asterisk, near noon. A horn sounded at the outer gate. A rider had come under truce. He was young, too young for war, his armor dented, his breath white in the cold. Asterisk, he carried no weapon. Only a sealed parchment marked with the sigil of Ravencourt. Asterisk, Althea received him in the courtyard, flanked by her guards. The rider bowed low and held out the message. She broke the seal and read in silence. Asterisk, when she finished, she smiled faintly, a strange, tired smile that made her soldiers uneasy. Asterisk, what does it say, my queen? Asked Aiden. She looked up, her voice calm. It says King Rohan wishes to meet me, alone, at the riverbank before nightfall, to end this, one way or another. The hall fell silent. Alone, Adon repeated. Yes, Althea said. It seems even in death, kings still cling to honor. Adon fell to one knee. My queen, you cannot go. It's a trap. But Althea's gaze softened. If it is, then let the trap close on me, not on them. Someone must choose to stop this, Adon, even if it means I do not return. 3. The journey to the river asterisk as the sun began its descent. Althea rode from Cairnwall through the snow. No banners flew. No escort followed her. Save for the old priest who refused to let her go alone. Asterisk. The land she crossed was unrecognizable. Asterisk. A graveyard of trees and smoke. Fields once golden, now white and still. In the distance, black shapes dotted the horizon, the remains of burned wagons, the skeletons of homes. The world seemed drained of all color, at last. She reached the river, the same river where the war had begun years ago. It was half frozen now. The ice fractured like glass, asterisk, its waters murmuring beneath in low, tired tones. Asterisk, and there, across the narrow bend, asterisk, stood King Rowan of Ravencourt, cloaked in furs, his crown gone, his sword sheathed. He looked smaller than the stories had made him, older, lonelier. For the meeting, no guards, no witnesses. Asterisk, only the wind and the river to hear what passed between them. Asterisk, Rohan bowed first, a gesture both humble and heavy. Your Majesty, he said quietly, I was not sure you would come. Asterisk, Althea dismounted, her boots crunching in the snow. Asterisk, I wasn't sure you would ask. Asterisk, he smiled faintly. We are both stubborn people, it seems. Asterisk for a long moment. Neither spoke. They only listened to the river whispering between them, a whisper like the breath of ghosts. Asterisk, finally. Rowan broke the silence. Asterisk, my men are dying, Althea. Yours too. The land cannot bear us any longer. Every field is barren, every well is ash. I know, she said softly. I would end it if I could. But if I return without victory, my council will tear me apart. They still believe in conquest. And yours is not the only council, Althea replied. I am queen of a city of graves. Even if I make peace, my people may not forgive it. Rowan's breath shuddered in the cold. Then why are we here? To remember that we are human, Althea said. Not gods. Not legends. Just two souls who have lost too much. The candle between kings. They stood in silence for a time. Then Althea drew something from her cloak. Asterisk, a small candle. Its wax cracked, its flame long gone. Asterisk, this was given to me by a woman from the village of Greymere, she said. Asterisk, she lost everything. Yet she carried this through the snow to light the dying. She set it on the frozen river between them. The last light of my kingdom, she whispered. Rowan stared at it for a long moment. Then he knelt, drew a flint from his belt, and struck a spark. The flame caught. Trembling weakly in the cold wind, both rulers watched it flicker. The small golden light danced upon their faces. Asterisk, two enemies. Two ghosts, illuminated by the same fragile hope. Asterisk, it's strange, Rohan murmured. Asterisk, how something so small can still defy the dark. Asterisk, Althea looked up. Her voice a whisper. Asterisk, maybe that's all we were ever meant to do. 6. The arrow. Asterisk, from the forest beyond the ridge. A bowstring sang. The sound was soft, barely more than a sigh. Asterisk, but it carried across the snow like thunder. The arrow struck before either could move. It pierced Rowan's shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Asterisk, Althea screamed, rushing to him. Asterisk, his guards hidden nearby, burst from the trees, shouting. But it was too late. Chaos erupted. More arrows, shouts. Asterisk, the priest fell to his knees, raising his arms toward heaven. Asterisk, stop. Stop this. Althea cried. But no one heard. The flame between them guttered, then went out. 7. The Queen's Prayer. When the battle dust cleared, the snow was red again. The priest lay dead. Rowan lay dying, and Althea knelt beside him, her hands covered in his blood. Asterisk, he tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. She pressed a hand to his cheek. Don't, she whispered. You've done enough. He smiled faintly. Tell them. It wasn't hatred. It was fear. Then his eyes closed, and he was still. Asterisk, for a long while, Althea didn't move. Asterisk, the wind tugged at her cloak, scattering ash across the frozen river. Asterisk, then. Slowly, she rose. Asterisk, her voice, when it came, was soft. Asterisk, a lullaby meant not for the living, but for the world itself. Asterisk, greater than if any gods remain. Let them see what we have done. Let them know we were not monsters. Asterisk, only children who forgot how to share the light. She lifted her hands toward the sky. The snow fell harder, her figure blurred, and when her soldiers found her hours later, the queen was gone, only the candle remained, its wick burning once more. 8. The river sleeps by dawn. The storm had passed. The bodies were gone, carried away by the river's slow thaw. The candle floated downstream, its light small but steady, drifting past the ruins, past the graves, past the silent towers of two kingdoms that no longer were, and for the first time in many years, the river sang again. The Last War of the Two Kingdoms. Scene 5. The ghosts of the river. The war had ended, or so the wind claimed, but the land did not believe it. The snow melted slowly, revealing bones beneath. And the river that once divided two kingdoms now carried the whispers of the dead. They said that when the moon rose over the valley, you could still hear voices, not cries of pain, but of memory, a song of things unfinished. The silence after storms. Weeks passed since the queen vanished by the river was empty now. Its towers stood like the ribs of a long dead giant. Grass grew through cracks in the stones. Doors swung open, closed with the breath of the wind. The throne room echoed only with dust. And yet there was something in the air, a hum, soft, low, patient, as if the stones themselves remembered her name. Beyond the city walls, the valley began to heal in its own strange way. Ash turned to soil. New shoots of green broke through the charred fields. The river thawed, winding lazily between the ruins. But at night, when mist rolled over its banks, a shape would sometimes appear, a flicker of light, drifting just above the water's surface. The candle, it floated endlessly, carried by the slow current, its flame unbroken by wind or wave, to the boy from the mountains far to the north. In the shadow of the iron hills, a boy named Finn lived with his grandfather. He was 12, too young to remember the war, but old enough to hear its stories. The old man told him every night by the fire, of kings and queens, of rivers that burned, and of the woman whose prayer had ended the world's anger. Finn would listen wide-eyed, his hands clutching the edge of his blanket. "Do you think she's still out there?" he would ask. The old man smiled sadly. "Maybe not her body, child, but her voice." Yes. The river keeps what it loves. One evening, while gathering firewood near the water's edge, Finn saw it, a tiny golden flame drifting slowly along the river, glowing even in daylight. He stepped closer, heart racing. The candle floated past him, its light bending gently as if it looked back. "Grandfather," he shouted. But the old man was far behind, and when Finn looked again, the candle was gone, only the sound of the river remained. A low, distant hum that seemed almost like a lullaby. 3. The Pilgrims of Ash. Years later, people began to return. Not kings or soldiers, but pilgrims, wandering souls who had lost everything to the war. They came from north and south, east and west, each carrying something they wished to bury, a token, a memory, a name. They built small stone cairns by the riverbank, each one marking a loss. Over time, the valley became a field of silent towers. No one ruled there anymore. No banners flew. Yet it was more sacred than any temple, because it belonged to everyone. At night, the pilgrims would light candles and place them in the river. Hundreds of small flames drifted downstream, mirroring the stars above, and somewhere among them, the queen's candle still floated, never fading, never sinking, as if the river itself refused to forget her. For the return of the soldier one winter morning, a man limped into the valley. His hair had turned white. His armor rusted to green. It was Taran, the blacksmith who once followed King Edric. He had wandered for years through empty lands, haunted by the sound of battle in his dreams. When he reached the river, he fell to his knees. The water was clear again. The ice long melted. He took from his satchel a small copper charm the one his daughter had made before the war. He held it tightly, whispering, "I kept it, little one. I didn't forget." Then he dropped it into the water. It sank slowly, coming to rest beside a flickering candle drifting by. For the first time in decades, he felt peace. That night, as the stars appeared, the pilgrims said they saw a second light join the first two flames, moving together, side by side, like two souls reunited. The voice beneath the water. Not all the dead stayed silent. When the wind was still, and the moon was high. Some swore they heard a woman's voice beneath the water. It was not a ghost's wail. Not sorrow. Not fear, but something gentler. A whisper, a prayer, greater than forgive us, for we were only afraid, remember us. For we once tried to love. Those who heard it would kneel by the shore, hands trembling, tears freezing on their cheeks, and the river, as if listening, would grow quiet again. The church of no name. As decades passed, a settlement grew beside the river, not a city, but a place of rest. The people built no walls, no crowns, no throne. At its heart stood a simple chapel, made of stone gathered from both fallen kingdoms. There were no icons, no sigils, only a single candle burning at the altar. They called it the Church of No Name. Every evening, the children of the valley would gather there to hear stories of the war, of the queen who vanished, and the river that forgave them all. The storytellers never used her name. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew it in their hearts. 7. The Ghost's Return. One night, a thick fog rolled over the river. The water stilled, and the air turned cold as glass. The villagers woke to see shapes moving through the mist. Figures in old armor. Banners tattered and pale. The ghosts of both kingdoms. They did not come in anger. They came in silence. The villagers watched as the spirits walked into the water, each one pausing to touch the surface, and then fading into light. Among them was a woman in white, a small candle cupped in her hands. She turned once toward the chapel, smiled, and whispered something no living ear could hear. Then she stepped into the river, and the water glowed gold. 8. The river's gift. When the fog lifted, the river was different. Its surface shimmered like glass, reflecting the sky more brightly than before. And where the candle had drifted, Flowers now bloomed, pale lilies, glowing faintly even in darkness. Asterisk, the villagers called them, the queen's tears. Asterisk, every spring they grew anew. Asterisk, spreading farther along the river banks, marking the path the candle once took. Travelers who passed through the valley often said that the place felt like peace itself. Asterisk, a silence that didn't frighten, but healed. Ike's the dream of the river many years later. Long after the world forgot the names of Eldoria and Ravenclaw, an old man sat by the river's edge. It was Finn, the boy from the mountains, now gray and stooped. Asterisk, he had spent his life tending to the chapel, telling stories to any who would listen. That evening, as the sun sank low, he saw something in the water, a faint, golden light, the candle. After all these years, it had returned. He smiled, tears catching in his beard. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "The river remembers." Asterisk, as night fell, he lay back in the grass, the candle's reflection dancing across his face, and when he closed his eyes, asterisk, he dreamed of a queen in a white cloak, a king beside her, and a world without war. A world where the river sang again, the eternal song. No one knows when the last flame went out. Asterisk, perhaps it never did. Asterisk, they say that if you walk the river's edge on a still night, you can still hear it, a soft melody carried by the current, a song that lulls even the restless to sleep. Greater than, rest now, for the fire has gone. Rest now. Asterisk, for the light remains. And so the river flowed on endlessly, peacefully. Asterisk, carrying the ghosts, the prayers, and the quiet memory of two kingdoms that destroyed themselves to learn how to forgive. Scene 6. The Fall of the Kingdoms, a quiet end to the war that no one survived. Asterisk, the war ended, not with a roar, but with a long, breathless silence. Asterisk, when the snow stopped falling, the plains of Hollerreach were no longer white. They were a field of shadows. Bodies lay scattered like fallen leaves. Asterisk, helmets, swords, and broken banners half buried beneath the frost. Asterisk, at first, crows came, then wolves, then nothing. The river that once divided two great nations ran thick with ash. Asterisk, for days, no one dared to cross it. Asterisk, and when the sun rose again, it found no kingdom to warm. One, the forgotten survivors. A handful of men and women crawled out from beneath ruins, their faces hollow, their eyes empty. They no longer remembered which side they'd fought for. They spoke in whispers, as though afraid the air itself might still belong to war. One of them, a soldier named Taran, had once carried Eldoria's banner into battle. Now he dragged it through the mud. Asterisk, its gold thread torn, its emblem soaked in blood. He wandered through villages that no longer had names. Asterisk, the houses stood like skeletons, their roofs torn away, their hearths cold. He found a child once, a girl, maybe 7, asterisk, sitting beside a frozen pond, staring at her reflection. Greater than, "Where's your family?" he asked. She didn't answer, only touched the water's surface and whispered. Asterisk, they went into the fire. Taran wrapped her in his cloak. He didn't ask again. There were no answers left in this world. Asterisk. 2. The plague of silence. It began as a cough, a small, harmless sound among the ruins. Asterisk then it spread like firehead, like warhead. The wounded who survived the battlefield found their blood poisoned by smoke, by rot, by grief. Villages became graveyards. The few doctors who remained asterisk burned herbs and prayed to nameless gods. But the sickness didn't care for prayers. It came for everyone. Soldier, farmer, queen, thief. Asterisk. In the shadow of a fallen chapel, Queen Althea's last healer buried her with his bare hands. No crown, no song, only the whisper of wind through broken glass. He marked her grave with a single stone, and on it he carved the words, "Greater than she asked for peace." 3. Ravencourt's king asterisk across the river. In the ruins of Ravencourt's black citadel, King Rohan sat alone upon a shattered throne. The walls around him had fallen. The banners above him burned. He had won the war asterisk, and in winning it, had lost everything. His generals were dead. Asterisk, his sons vanished. His queen gone to sickness months before. Each night he walked the empty halls, calling out their names, hearing only echoes in reply. Asterisk, on the 7th night, he took off his crown and set it beside him. "Greater than a kingdom of ashes," he whispered. Asterisk still calls itself a kingdom. Asterisk, he drank from a goblet of wine, but the taste had turned to metal. When morning came, asterisk, his servants found the goblet spilled beside him. His hand cold as stone. The last king of Ravencourt had joined the silence. 4. Nature's return. Years passed. The snow melted, and grass began to grow over bones. Rivers carved new paths through the ruins. Asterisk, vines climbed the walls of empty castles. Asterisk, birds nested where banners once flew. No armies marched anymore. No bells rang for war or worship. Asterisk. Only the rhythm of wind and water remained. Asterisk, deer walked the same roads where men once fought. Asterisk, wildflowers bloomed inside open tombs. Asterisk, the air smelled of rain, not smoke. The earth had decided to forget. 5. The last generation from the ashes of both kingdoms. A few scattered families rebuilt what they could. They no longer called themselves Eldorians or Ravencourters. They called themselves wanderers. They told their children stories, asterisk, not of kings or battles, but of rivers, stars, and the silence that saved them at night. They lit small fires and sang soft songs in broken languages. Their words didn't rhyme anymore, but they carried warmth, and that was enough. One old woman told the children, "Greater than once there were two lands divided by pride asterisk now. There is only one, the land that remembers." The children didn't understand, but they laughed, and their laughter echoed through the empty valleys like sunlight returning after a storm. 6 times mercy. Centuries turned like pages. The ruins of Eldoria sank beneath the soil. Asterisk, the stones of Ravencourt's citadel crumbled into the river. Asterisk, scholars from faraway lands came searching for history, but found only silence. The wind had erased every name, every line carved in marble. Yet sometimes, when the moon was high, asterisk, and the fog hung low over they said you could still hear faint voices, not screams, not cries, just the quiet murmur of a people finally at peace, a lullaby of ghosts. 7. The river remembers asterisk at last. The river, the one that had once divided love from hate, flowed clear again. Its banks bloomed with white lilies, its waters soft and silver beneath the moonlight. Every spring it carried fallen petals downstream, as if offering them to the sea. No one knew whose blood had once stained it red, and perhaps that was mercy, for remembering brings pain, but forgetting brings rest. Some say the river whispers. If you stand close enough at night, and if you listen very carefully, asterisk, you can hear a voice, soft as sleep itself, greater than all wars end in silence, asterisk, and in silence the world begins again, asterisk, the wind carries that whisper across the plains, asterisk, through the valleys once filled with fire, and over the hills where flowers now bloom. The kingdoms are gone, but peace, peace remains, and so the night closes its eyes. The stars breathe above, the earth sleeps, and the story, finally, asterisk, ends. Scene 7. The silence after all, asterisk. The wind moved softly through the tall grass, each blade bending like a whisper in prayer. The land was quiet now, asterisk, so quiet that even the birds sang softly, as though afraid to disturb the peace. The kingdoms were gone, asterisk, the war, the fire. The cries all vanished like a dream fading with morning light, asterisk, and yet the earth still breathed. It always had. One. The traveler, asterisk. He came from the west, asterisk, a lone traveler wrapped in a dark cloak, his boots caked with mud, his hair touched with silver. He carried no banner, no weapon, asterisk, only a small book, bound in worn leather, and the weary eyes of one who had walked too far. For weeks he had followed the old trade road, asterisk, a cracked path, swallowed by moss and roots, asterisk. It was said the road once connected to mighty kingdoms, now it led only to silence. He came not seeking treasure or fame, asterisk, he came for stories, asterisk, the kind that survive only in the breath of wind, and in the hearts of ghosts. -2. The ruins of Hollow Reach, asterisk, by dusk, he reached the plains of Hollow Reach, asterisk, the same field where, centuries ago, thousands had fallen beneath a blood-red sky, but there were no bones here now, asterisk, no swords, no shields, only wildflowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. He stopped to listen, asterisk, somewhere, far off. A river murmured, the same river that had once divided to nations. The traveler knelt and brushed his fingers through the grass. Asterisk, the soil was dark, rich, fed by the ashes of generations. He whispered to himself, asterisk, greater than the land remembers. Asterisk, a small wind answered him, stirring the petals of a white lily beside his hand. It almost sounded like a sigh. -3. The forgotten temple at dawn. He found the remains of a stone structure, half buried beneath ivy and thyme. The doorway was broken, the roof caved in. Inside, shafts of sunlight cut through the dust like golden ribbons in the air. The traveler lit a small candle, asterisk, its flame flickered softly, casting warm light upon the carvings that covered the walls. He brushed away the moss and read the faint words carved into the stone, asterisk. She asked for peace. He smiled faintly. Queen Althea, he whispered, recognizing the name from old legends. They had called her the Queen of Forgiveness, but, in truth, most had forgotten even that title. He opened his book and began to write. His ink froze for a moment, not from cold, but from the weight of the silence around him. -4. The echo of the river later that night. He followed the river downstream. It was beautiful, silver and calm beneath the starlight. He camped beside it. Built a small fire and listened to the water speak in its endless rhythm. At first it was only sound, the soft hiss of current over stone. Then, as the world grew still, it began to change. He thought he heard voices, faint, far away, as if carried from another age. The laughter of children, the song of soldiers, marching home, the weeping of a queen, the whisper of a king, all blending together into something not sorrowful, but peaceful, a melody made of memory. He closed his eyes and listened. Greater than all wars end in silence. The river murmured, and in silence, the world begins again. The traveler's breath slowed. He set down his pen. The fire burned low, and for the first time in years, he felt no need to move. -5. The dream of the lost that night, he dreamed. He stood upon a hill, and before him, stretched two kingdoms reborn, Eldoria and Ravencourt, shining not with steel, but with light. Their people walked together along the river, hand in hand. Children played in the fields where once men died. The air smelled of bread, not blood. And from the towers of both cities, bells rang not for war, but for homecoming. He looked to the sky, and saw two stars draw close, merging into one. When he awoke, the sun was rising, and the dream still lingered, like perfume in the morning air. 6. The song of the earth the traveler continued his journey, but slower now, not out of weariness, but reverence. Every step felt sacred. Every breeze carried the memory of something holy. He stopped upon a ridge overlooking the valley below. The river curved through a carpet of flowers, glittering beneath the daylight like a silver thread. He took out his book again, and on the final page, he wrote, "Greater than there were once two kingdoms, they fought until the earth wept, now. The earth has healed and in its silence, I have found my peace." He closed the book. The wind lifted its cover for a moment, as if reading what he had written. Then it carried the scent of lilies toward the horizon. 7. The end of history. Generations passed. The traveler's name was forgotten, just like the kings and queens before him. But his book survived. It was found centuries later by another wanderer, buried beneath the roots of an old oak tree. Inside were words faded by time, but still legible enough to tell one truth, greater than peace is not the end of war. It is what remains when the echoes fade. That wanderer read the final line aloud, and the wind seemed to answer with a sigh. He looked up at the stars, bright and eternal, and whispered, greater than sleep now. Kingdoms of dust, the world remembers you kindly. The night grew calm, the stars shimmered, and far away. The river kept singing, soft, endless, forgiving. Its voice became the world's lullaby. The earth turned beneath the stars, and everything that had ever been rested quietly beneath its gentle rhythm. No pain, no battle, only peace. And as the last ember of the traveler's campfire faded into darkness, the land exhaled and the story, after ages of sorrow, finally slept. Asterisk.